Hi, everyone. My name is Jeanette Price, and I am a military spouse education advocate and founder of the blog and Military Spouse Education. And today we're going to be going over military spouse education benefits, the three main ones that are typically allotted to military spouses. So we'll be going over my CAA, the GI Bill, and DEA Chapter 35. What I do is I help spouses maximize their benefits and especially use their benefits. Some of these benefits are use it or lose it. And oftentimes the earlier we use them, the sooner we'll benefit from them. And if we know the ins and outs, we'll be able to maximize and ultimately be able to benefit more. Okay, so my CAA is for active duty spouses. GI Bill is for, of course, eligible spouses who have had that eligibility transferred to them. And then DEA Chapter 35 is for 100% permanent and totally disabled veteran spouses and their dependents. So who am I? I'm an educator. I'm a full-time high school teacher. I'm a writer, entrepreneur. I have a side business as well, and military spouse education advocate. And I'll be getting into why this is so important to me. I have a bachelor's degree in English and French. I currently teach English and French, and I have a master's in teaching from the University of Virginia. I've been published by the New York Times Learning Network. I was part of the New York Times Teaching Project's first cohort, and I'm national board certified and licensed in 5 different states in 4 different endorsement areas. And in my belief, that's all through education. And part of my advocacy for education is I work with high schoolers. I help them get into college, and I'm hoping to do the same thing for military spouses. So my military affiliation is my spouse was active duty in the Navy for 5 years. We were married prior to him joining. And unexpectedly in year 5, he got hurt in a career-ending injuries. And I was working as a teacher at the time. And my work, after he was discharged, my work was the deciding factor of where we would be living and all of our future plans. And in less than a year, literally 9 months, we were facing me becoming the breadwinner and our lives basically completely changing from the military life. And getting a job and salary, of course, is impacted by your level of education. And my spouse is now a disabled veteran. So my urgency for this is that this could happen to anyone. As spouses, we are not ignorant to those risks. And it's very urgent that we be prepared. And possibly, with injuries and things like that, like what happened with my husband, there were a lot of unknowns, and it became like me becoming the breadwinner. And easily our spouses could be just like mine, one deployment, one training exercise, or one accident away from our lives completely changing forever. And you can't rely on disability. You have to, as a family, be able to move on from the military life. And in my opinion, the best way to do that is for maximizing our education benefits. So I started Military Spouse Education. That's militaryspouseeducation.com. Because using military benefits is complicated. As a high school English teacher, I can tell you the lexile level of those websites is very complex. You have to really read through them carefully. There's a lot of exceptions, and my goal is to simplify all of that for spouses and just make it more straightforward. It can be really overwhelming. And also I found when trying to use my own benefits that there are scams out there that use predatory recruitment tactics of spouses. If you Google most of these benefits, the top ones that are going to come out are all ads for these scam schools or schools that are deliberately targeting military spouses and may not have quality programs. And I also found a lot of misinformation, especially on Facebook, people spreading misinformation that they just don't know any better. And I really wanted to position myself as an authority that can provide trustworthy advice and trustworthy information that's most up to date and accurate. And there are a lot of quality schools out there that just need to be more military friendly. And that's what I'm trying to work and partner with quality schools and quality programs, and informing spouses about them, and just let them know that they have a large menu of options to choose from, and counseling them on helping them make the decision that's best for them. And the DoD and the VA cannot endorse a program. Okay. However, I can. Okay. The DoD and the VA should not be recommending a specific program for you because they have to be impartial. They cannot endorse a specific school. However, I can look at something and tell you it's a scam. I can look at something and tell you if going online might be the best thing for your lifestyle. There's a lot of things for you to consider, including your timeline, PCSs, pregnancies. There's all kinds of things we need to consider when going to school. And if you're not set up to be successful because of those factors, it's a waste of your benefits. So it's really looking at what is achievable for you and how can we support you in using your benefits and using them the most wisely and maximizing them. So my services is that I have a growing blog with resources. I frequently ask questions, get answered on my blog as often as I'm able to. I have a MilSpouse Motivation Facebook group for active duty, reserve, and veteran spouses. And it really is just trying to build a community where these questions can get answered and we motivate each other, not just professionally or academically, but also just in our personal lives. Where we might need that community and motivation. And I offer one-on-one education counseling for military spouses. And I also, with commonly asked questions I get is why military spouses? I chose military spouses because veterans and active duty already have a ton of resources out there. However, what I'm finding is that military spouses are targeted either by scams or just not knowing all of the benefits that they possibly have and how they can maximize them. And I think military spouses are often overlooked when it comes to using these benefits. And if we're underserved, I think that's a real space in our community that needs service. So that's what I'm trying to do with military spouse education. So my disclaimer is I'm not affiliated with the government. I'm not affiliated with the DoD. I'm not affiliated with Military One Source, SECO, MyCAA, GI Bill, DEA Chapter 35, the Department of Veterans Affairs. I'm not affiliated with any of them. However, this is a really good thing in my opinion. Okay, this is my own education from using these benefits myself and the hacks I have found. Okay, all of my advice plays by the rules, perfectly legal. It's just getting you what you're entitled to and really maximizing that and not wasting every penny that you're entitled to. And I have personally used my CAA and DEA Chapter 35. And then with my spouse, he's really great at strategizing using his GI Bill. And I've learned a lot with helping him strategize how to maximize those benefits as well. So let's start with my CAA. It's for active duty spouses. So who qualifies for my CAA? It stands for My Career Advancement Account. It is $4,000 that you are entitled to. However, your spouse needs to be active duty. That means on Title 10 orders, and they need to fall between the ranks of E1 to E5, O1 to O2, or W1 to W2. If your spouse is a reservist, you can qualify while your spouse is active duty. Please contact me. It's a total hack I can help you do. While your spouse is active duty, you can get in and use those benefits before he or she is deactivated, okay? So there are limitations, but don't underestimate my CAA, okay? So a lot of spouses talk poorly about my CAA because there are limitations. It's only supposed to be used for certifications, licenses, and these limitations hinder its flexibility, yes. However, it's not perfect, but there's so much you can do with it, okay? And I'll be going over these misconceptions because there are spouses that think it won't benefit them, and that was a misconception I had at one point in time, and I was really fortunate to find out that I was wrong, and I'm helping spouses use them themselves. So you can hack it to find what works for you and maximize its benefit. And this is part of my services. Okay. So common misconceptions about my CAA. Okay. My misconception was the only person I knew when just starting out and as a military spouse, the only person I knew who had used it to become a nail technician. I already had my master's in teaching, and I just didn't see how this could benefit me at all because I thought it could only really be used on technical schools or those kind of certifications. And that's wrong. Also, there's a misconception that you can't use it if you have a bachelor's degree. That's wrong. And then also that you can't use it for graduate level work. That's wrong. So the point is, no matter level of education you have, there is always a way to make it work for you. Okay. So must know about MyCAA is the funds are directly paid to the school on your behalf. They will not reimburse you for anything you pay out of pocket. Okay. So what scams oftentimes try to do is to say, oh, pay this and they'll reimburse you. That is an absolute scam. They will not reimburse you. That is not how MyCAA works. Okay. So any costs you've incurred prior to using the benefit as well. Okay. If you've already started a program, they'll pick it up and start possibly paying for it from where you are, but they will not pay for it for what was before. So how to get started, contact me for one-on-one individual counseling. You're, of course, not obligated to take my advice. Military One Source provides your official answers. Okay, that is the official source that you should be going to. However, mine's the unofficial advice. And the SECO website has the list of programs. So you might be wondering, how did I end up using them? Okay, so teachers are paid by years of service and then the amount of education we have postgraduate. And I was able to, after doing a lot of research, find multiple programs that were good for me and able to budget it. So I didn't get just one certificate. I got 2 graduate level certificates out of it. And I got 33 quarter credits and 1 semester credit and 3 different education plans approved. Okay. It wasn't easy, but the strategizing that I did helped me get a lot of postgraduate education that helped accelerate my salary placement, which of course, with me becoming potentially the breadwinner of my family, that was like really important for me to get that education in. Now, I wish I had known about it earlier, because when I found out about it was when I had finally gotten a full-time job and things were getting hectic in my spouse's career. And I really wish I had known about it earlier when I was just substitute teaching and getting started at our duty station. So I definitely think the earlier you use it, the better. It's also a use it or lose it benefit. Okay. Before we move on to the GI Bill, I just want you to know it's use it or lose it. Your spouse gets promoted, your spouse gets discharged, your spouse gets deactivated. All of those things, you no longer qualify. Okay. So you need to know you use it while you have it or it's gone. And I really think there's a sense of urgency in using it. Okay. So moving on to the GI Bill. This is a benefit that a lot of people know about, and there's a lot of information out there. It is complicated in a lot of ways, yet easy because there are military liaisons at a lot of schools that can help you through the process. This is not all the details you need to know because there are a lot of exceptions. And even for the Montgomery Bill, there's like 6 different ways you qualify and can use them. So this is not going to be all inclusive of everything. This is an overview of the 9/11 GI Bill and the Montgomery GI Bill. Okay. So the post 9/11 GI Bill explained. You may be eligible for these benefits if you as in the service member has served on active duty for at least 90 days, whether continuous or interrupted, okay, after September 10th, 2001. This applies for both active duty and selected reserve. And that is information straight from VA.gov. Some of this I just straight took from the website because it's the technical language I think we need to be able to know and understand. Okay, so the benefits in the GI Bill has to be transferred to the spouse to be able to use it. Okay, so if your spouse is still active duty, you might have the option of getting this transferred if you haven't transferred it yet. So your spouse has to have completed at least 6 years of service on the date this request is approved. So you can possibly apply before then, prior to approval, but you have to make it line up that the request is approved after 6 years of service. And they have to agree to add former years of service to their service contract. And the person getting these benefits has to be enrolled in DEERS. So you yourself has to be enrolled in DEERS, or the other dependent that it's getting transferred to has to be enrolled in DEERS. So for the transfer of eligibility, it's also called a TOE. It has to be transferred to you or the service member's dependent within these requirements. You can apply for 36 months of benefit, and you may be eligible to receive tuition up to a limit, depending on the state, BAH, or a book or a book and supply stipend. I'll be going over more about BAH later. But tuition does have some limitations depending on the state you're in. And BAH has some limitations too, whether you're online or in person. So what you need to know is the GI Bill is paid in months of entitlement as opposed to my CAA, which was just straight $4,000 budget. This is paid in months of entitlement, and months can be partial, okay? A typical four-year college is 9 months a year if you do not do summer semesters. And if your semester is, for example, 4.5 months from start to end, it will take 4.5 months. You still get that leftover half month. And this is paid by the month. It's just important to know it's a different type of mindset than my CAA. So when can you use the post 9/11? You can use the benefits right away while your spouse is still active duty. However, you don't qualify for the BAH. Okay, so the BAH, the housing allowance, you don't qualify for it if the service member is already receiving BAH. You cannot double dip. And there's also a limit of using it within 15 years of leaving active duty, from the service member leaving active duty for you to use them. Okay, so when can children use the post 9/11 GI Bill? They may use the benefits only after the service member has completed the 10 years of service. So you can use them while their spouse is still active duty. However, your dependent cannot. And the children do qualify for the BAH while using it on active duty. So this means if your spouse has surpassed the 10 years of service and is still active duty, they can qualify because it's assumed that the dependent would no longer be living at home. And there is no limit of using it within 15 years. However, they cannot use it after age 26. So that's important to know. So spouses have this 15-year limit while child dependents do not. However, it's limited to the age of 26. They can't use it after that. So this is how to transfer your 9/11 GI Bill entitlement, or your spouse's. You must complete a TOE, a transfer of eligibility, through MillConnect. And service members can control how many months of a benefit are transferred. Okay, it doesn't have to go all to one dependent. It can be split between spouse and child dependent or multiple child dependents, depending on how they want to do it. So here's the Montgomery Bill. Okay, the eligibility it has different eligibility requirements between if you're active duty or selective reserve. Okay, and here's how the Montgomery Bill gets a little more complicated. So this is the most common option of how service members qualify for the Montgomery GI Bill. That they have a high school diploma or GED. Okay, they entered active duty after 1985. And they had their military pay reduced by, I can see my dog over there, isn't he sweet? That they had their pay reduced by $100 for the first 12 months of service. And they have to have paid into the GI Bill. And the service member served for 3 years or 2 years if your agreement was when you were enlisted, or 4 years if you were in the selected reserve, okay, within a year of leaving active duty. So the other eligibility for the selected reserve, you have either a 6-year service obligation in the selected service or are an officer in the selected reserve who agreed to 6 years in addition to your initial service obligation and meet other requirements. Okay, so there's 4 other options, and this is all on va.gov, and I recommend, I'm happy to talk to you about these different options for you, but the Montgomery Bill takes a bit more reading and is a bit more complicated. However, it's important to be able to weigh both the 9/11 and then Montgomery when making your decision if your spouse elected for it. So there's some updates to BAH. Okay, we have like post-pandemic, lots of schools online, like how is that being compensated? So when using the GI Bill and attending in person, you receive BAH at the E5 rate for the zip code in which the university is. But how does BAH work if you're online? Okay, it's half of the national average of BAH. So if you're fully online, you will receive BAH in the amount of $916.50. Okay, but what if you're in person? Okay, what if it's a hybrid program? If your program is hybrid, whenever you have to physically go to that school, even if just for a short time during the semester, let's say you're online the majority of the semester, and then you have to go in person for a week or 2 weeks for some kind of seminar, you will get the full E5 BAH for the zip code in which the university is, okay, even if it's a hybrid program, okay? And another question is, what if my program requires me to work online but attend an in-person seminar? Okay, what if it's shorter than that? What if it's not like half-time hybrid or so? This is something that to consider, as the BAH of university towns is typically higher than $916.50. So it is possible, if you're doing a hybrid program, have to go in person at least part of the semester, even if it's not the full semester. You can get the BAH for where the university is. So what are your options if your spouse paid into the Montgomery GI Bill? You have the option to use either the 9/11 or the Montgomery GI Bill. And here's a great question: is should your spouse transfer the entitlement? This is highly personal, and I can't really weigh in on what's best for you and your family, but there are factors to consider. Whoever gets the GI Bill transferred to them is the recipient. You can switch recipients after having done it once. There's the additional paperwork you have to do. However, if you switch it away from someone, you cannot return it to that recipient again. Another thing to consider, and this is sad, but happened to someone who I've recently become acquainted with, is that if the service member is discharged and the entitlement has not been transferred, the benefit could be lost. For her example was her husband was discharged, entitled to the GI Bill, and then he passed away. And because the transfer of eligibility hadn't been given to either her or her children, the GI Bill was lost. So this is something to consider if you're weighing like post-secondary education options for you or your family. So to use the GI Bill, you need to contact the VA and also coordinate with a GI Bill or military liaison at your school of choice, okay? Military-friendly schools are going to have great military liaisons that you can work with. And for doing certificates or licenses or technical schools, that they may not have a military liaison, so definitely contact the VA. The VA so far, from me contacting them for my DEA Chapter 35, hasn't been super hard to get a hold of, maybe a bit of a wait time, but don't be discouraged if you need to contact the VA. They have really answered some of the complicated questions I've had. Doing it by email, there's a lot lost in translation, in my opinion, and there's a lot of just copy and pasting that they do, thinking that it's a frequently asked question that you've posed, when sometimes you have a really specific, unique situation that really calls for a conversation. So my recommendation, if you can, is to call instead of email to VA. So let's get into DEA Chapter 35. So you're only eligible if your spouse is 100% permanent and total disabled veteran, okay? So this is rare to get 100% P&T, permanent and total as it's called. It's very difficult to get, and it's not as popular or as well known. However, this is a big deal because Chapter 35 affects not just the spouse, it is also the dependents that are eligible. And this is why I'm really advocating for this, because just like the GI Bill, the child dependents are eligible as well. But with DEA Chapter 35, the misinformation isn't just affecting spouses who have these benefits, it's also affecting their kids. So the fact that multiple family members can benefit from this, from DEA funding, that's really sad if we're not able to fix this misinformation. So trying to fix this and help, because there's just less information about it because of how rare it is. So for your spouse being a disabled veteran, okay, it has to be rated at 100% permanent total. There are limitations to your eligibility based on when they were rated 100%. So if your spouse upon discharge was rated 100% permanent total, you get 20 years to use the benefit. Okay, if your spouse was rated after discharge 100% permanent total, you get 10 years to use the benefit. So you don't want to run out of time, and you definitely need to think of your life timeline. My understanding is that you can't be in the middle of a program and expect, if those 10 years have ended, that you can keep doing it. The timeline is when the date comes up at 10 years from the date of that rating, or 20 years from the date of discharge. That is when your eligibility ends. And that's for spouses specifically, okay? However, for Gold Star spouses, spouses of missing in action or prisoners of war, they are also eligible. Okay, so not just 100% permanent total, but also spouses who have had their service member die while on active duty or as a result of a service-connected disability, if they've been missing in action or captured, or they were detained in some way and made a prisoner of war, or this is more of a different exception is they're in the hospital or getting outpatient treatment for service-connected permanent total disability, has to be rated that way and is likely to be discharged for that disability. So for dependents, who qualifies? Okay, all legal dependents of 100% permanent total disabled veteran qualify for DEA Chapter 35. This includes adopted children, stepchildren, and children do not have this 10 to 20 year limit. And the spouses do, however, so that's something you need to know, and that's important. Other limitations for children is that there are no time restrictions like the post-discharge, like I said, or post-rating. However, children can only use it between 18 and 26 years old. Okay, so definitely know that there are limitations on your child. And it can be used for more than just undergrad or technical school. It can be used for graduate school as well. However, they just have that one timeline between 18 and 26 years. Okay, so what is the benefit? Okay, it's different from the two other benefits. Okay, like the GI Bill, you are paid in months. Okay, however, you are paid based on what percent of full time you are considered by the school. Okay, so let's say you're taking 6 credits and full time is considered 12 credits. Therefore, you'll be getting half of the stipend. If you are taking 6 credits and full-time is 9 credits, you'll be getting 3/4 of the benefit, or 2/3. So we'll look at the pay scale so you can see what that is. Okay, so these are the compensation rates for 2021. These are typically increased and updated in October of each year. So it's based on, the monthly rate is based on what percent of full-time you are. Okay, so right now full-time is $1,298 a month. And then of course you see from 3/4 time, half-time, and then less than half-time and more than a quarter time is $753, which I think is pretty generous because it's the same rate as half-time, but also half of what more than half of what full-time is. So there could really be ways to maximize that for you if you're wanting to go not completely full-time and only able to do one or 2 classes a year or semester. And then a quarter time or less is $324.50. So it's important to note about DEA Chapter 35 is the compensation is paid directly to you. This is different from my CAA and very different from the GI Bill. Okay, you're compensated directly based on the amount of full time you are. Okay, and you have to work with a military liaison at your school of choice because they are the ones that verify what percent of full time you are. Okay, but this is paid directly to you. Okay, this is not paid to the school. So it is compensated by the month, and it can include partial months. Okay. It can also be used as well on licenses and certifications. So for example, to use my DEA Chapter 35, I wanted to do a certification, and that certification costs $2,000. Okay. From seeing that 1,295 was less than $2,000. I used a little less than 2 months of my eligibility. So it is partial. They even divide it down to the day, which I find really interesting. Okay, so licenses and certificates are different from going to enrolled classes that have like tuition. For the certificate I did, I had to pay for it myself and then get reimbursed. Okay, so my story with using this is I did, national board certification, and national board certification, you submit it and then you don't get your test results for about 7 months after you've submitted it, which is a really angsty amount of time to be waiting. When I applied to get reimbursed, however, they told me I could not get reimbursed even though I had the receipt for it. I could not get reimbursed until I had the test results. And I understand that why they do that, because they don't want to pay for a test that you didn't even go and take. But when it comes to getting reimbursed, it took me over 2 years to get reimbursed for the entire $2,000. That's not to be discouraging. Okay, yes, I was able to still get my, I knew the benefits were coming down the road, but that's different from doing like tuition enrolled school. Okay, so just know if it's something you're paying out of pocket for and you're not getting the test results expediently, you're going to be out of pocket for it for a while. And then on my latest compensation reimbursement that I had like filed for, it took a while and actually got held up a little bit, and I had to call the VA twice to kind of get a progress status update on what was going on with it. So with the reimbursement, definitely be in contact with them if it's not going through within 6 to 8 weeks. So what do you do if you qualify for DEA Chapter 35? I recommend that you apply for your certificate of eligibility through the VA as soon as possible. It can take a while to get that certificate of eligibility, and you cannot do school until you have your certificate of eligibility. I couldn't even start, doing that certification until after I had my certificate of eligibility to try to get that reimbursement. And your COE, certificate of eligibility, will state how much remaining time you have, like when it will expire. And it will also state how many months you have left. So something different that's happened is for the first time, I've always gotten things by mail. And then for the first time with doing this latest reimbursement, I got it by email. And they said that this is a change they've done for COVID. I don't know if this is going to be a permanent change, but just know where if you've ever dealt with a VA, you get like a piece of mail every day, it seems like. But instead of for DA Chapter 35, it seems that they've moved to email. So what's good to know about DA Chapter 35? If you're in school and your tuition is less than what you're getting compensated for, those extra funds are for you. Okay, they're meant to offset other costs, of course, but if you could possibly get a little bit of compensation that's over what your tuition is, help you offset the costs of, living while going through school or your books, etc., that can be really good. So this means if you're full-time for a regular 4-month college semester, you're entitled to $5,192. Okay. So let's say that, okay, where I am, my in-state tuition is roughly like $4,500 for a semester. That's for undergraduate. That would mean that you'd be taking home $692. Okay. Yes, we're not like breaking the bank by doing that, but it's just something to consider that, you have a real budget to work with. And I think, even though, okay, you're not going to be able to go to Harvard Law with it, it's definitely something that can help you with going back to school. And you can definitely strategize how much tuition you're paying based on what your compensation is for what part of full-time you are. So before you use DEA Chapter 35, if your spouse is 100% permanent and total disabled, many states provide free tuition, okay? So don't just leap into using DEA Chapter 35 if you've gotten into a school. You normally have to be a full-time resident for several years to qualify for this. But if your spouse is 100% permanently, totally disabled, you and your dependents, okay, can qualify for a full tuition waiver. Okay, so contact me if you'd like more information on this. This is different from state to state, and we can see if you qualify. But an example of a few states that I absolutely know of that offer tuition waivers are California, Maine, and Indiana. Okay, you have to be a resident for a certain amount of time. But, California has is a really great example of that. They completely waive it if you are 100% permanently totally disabled, or also my understanding is if you're combat wounded, they waive that for both you and your dependents. So let's just do an overview of everything. Okay, my CAA, active duty, okay, on that Title 10 order, E1 to E5, O1 to O2, W1 to W2, okay? You have a very limited window of time, and this is why my blog as of now is really focusing on my CAA, because there's a ton of misinformation and scams, but also just overall, we have such a small window of time to use it, and I had such a small window of time to use it, and I didn't even know about it for so long, and then by the time I did know about it and found the right program, I I had a really strict timeline that I had to do, and prerequisites to clear to be able to do the graduate certificates I was doing. So it is possible if you're short on time, and that's where I can come in and help you strategize what program to do based on the funding and what amount of time you have left. Okay. You qualify even if your spouse is a reservist. Okay. And this is $4,000 paid directly to the school. You do not get reimbursed by my CAA ever. Okay. Moving on to the GI Bill. You must have the entitlement transferred to you. It's not automatically yours like how my CAA is if you qualify. There are many different requirements and options to entitlement, so definitely check the VA for that. The GI Bill pays tuition up to a limit depending on the state, books and supplies, and BAH. BAH if the service member is also not receiving BAH for the spouse. That is different, however, for a child dependent. A child dependent can get the BAH while the service member is still active duty receiving BAH. DEA Chapter 35 is a monthly stipend paid to you, okay, and it's divided up by month, okay, and it's only if your spouse is 100% permanent and totaled, if you're a Gold Star spouse, if your service member was prisoner of war or missing in action, or if your spouse is critically wounded and bound to be discharged by service-connected disabilities, okay? So this is a great benefit for those who definitely need it most based on what their service member has gone through, but it's also a lot more rare as opposed to the GI Bill or my CAA. So you're compensated based on the full amount of full-time you are according to the school. This could mean if 3 credits is full-time, and it's only a $500, class, that means, you're going to be getting over $5,000 for 500 worth of tuition. Okay. Of course, that's an exaggerated example, but I just want you to see that it depends on the school itself. And this is where you have to really individualize and where my counseling can come in and help. Looking at based on budget and based on if it's going to be able to be covered by your benefits. There's a lot of schools, however, I'm originally from Virginia. I know DEA Chapter 35 would not be able to cover a semester of in-state school in Virginia. It's just way more expensive than that. But other states have less tuition that's required, and you can really strategize that way. And with all the online options, we can definitely find something that's good for you. You can also do licenses and certifications, but that you pay for. Typically, for my experience, you typically pay for and get reimbursed for, okay? DEA Chapter 35 paid directly to you, unlike my CAA and the GI Bill. You also do not receive BAH, important to know. It's a flat amount of compensation, and that's just how it is. So what I ask you to do is to think beyond education, okay? It's not about, I want an associate's, I want a graduate degree. It should be about what skills do you want for the rest of your life, okay? And this doesn't necessarily have to be going into a traditional career, 9 to 5. This could be for launching a business. This could be for starting a new career, going in a new direction. Education can do a lot for you. And even if, let's say, you're at the point in your life where you're like, look, I don't need an education anymore. Guess what? We can find something like fun for you to do. If you want to like be able to take great family photos, take a photography class. Okay. If you want to like work on your wellness, you could possibly take like a yoga instruction class. Okay. There's all kinds of things that'll pay for. And I know that's a bit exaggerated, but school can be fun, and it can also help you meet people. And it's just about skills. It's not just about that piece of paper. Okay. And that's why I'm really passionate about helping spouses use their benefits, because this is about you both professionally, but also personally, using these benefits to benefit yourself and just improving your quality of life. Okay. So my services are to counsel military spouses on their specific benefits, strategizing how to maximize using your benefits, and then help choosing a program as well. It can be really overwhelming, and just looking at you holistically, okay, looking at your personal and professional goals, and then also looking at your lifestyle, okay, where are you? Are you pre-transition? Are you post-transition? Is your spouse active duty? Like, what is your timeline on that? And just overall looking at your life and what you have time to do and what you're realistically able to complete with what's going on in your life. So I absolutely ask that you please contact me. Okay, my email is jjprice2013@gmail.com. I have a growing Facebook group, MilSpouse Motivation Network. Definitely please join. It's not just about like professional or, excuse me, or going back to school. It's also about like personally how we can support each other, motivating each other. This life can be challenging, and motivating each other can definitely benefit us, and this is a community for doing that. Okay, on Instagram, my handle is milspouse.education, and then on Facebook my page is Military Spouse Education. All right. On LinkedIn, here I am. On LinkedIn, my name is just Jeanette Price. Okay, please find me. And then on my website, please check out my website. I'm always updating it with newer information and getting more frequently asked questions answered. But that's militaryspouseeducation.com. Okay. So thank you so much. Please contact me if you have any advice, questions, or comments. I think what's most important for you to know is that as much as, your spouse might be put into ranks and rates and things that, make everything so uniform, is that you yourself are an individual, and for these benefits you deserve using them in an individual way that like specifically helps you personally. So please reach out to me. I'm here to simplify that for you. I hope this was beneficial for you, and thank you very much.